vote if the United Nations were put on the carpet, so to speak, and you had to vote as to we keep it or cast it adrift, what would you do and why?
I would actually try to sponsor a bill to get us out of the UN right now. Watch as the microphone goes down the line, except for the person to my immediate right, the equivocation you see on this answer. The truth is, if the United States got out of the UN, we should immediately move to set ourselves up as an alternative to the United Nations. We'd have many nations that would also leave with us and join with us, one of them being history. The second thing that we have to understand is that if the United States gets out of the United Nations, some people are going to say, well, that removes our vote from the Security Council. The Security Council will not exist if the United States leaves the United Nations, because the United States funds the United Nations.
Right.
And the same right in fact to Congress. No nation on this earth would ever seek to unilaterally operate against the will of the United States, regardless of whether they're in the United Nations or not. Period. Let's get out of the United Nations.
We need to defund all funding from the United Nations. We need to immediately leave the United Nations. We need to cut all foreign aid to all countries. We don't have the money. We need to get our own house, our own financial house in order before we give out money here, there, and everywhere to every country in the world. Now, the United Nations has essentially been co-opted by communists. They've used this green agenda in order to get power and control over you. And I am not going to tolerate communists existing in my country telling me how I have to live in my country.
I believe fully that we have to reduce our costs. The United Nations is an institution that has run amok, it's bloated bureaucracy, and we have to exercise control of the purse. But as Jesse mentioned, I don't advocate us unilaterally leaving. I believe in that it is important to have an engagement on an international basis. But we do have to, again, cut our the budget and get it focused on what it was originally driven to, which is create an area for countries to speak together.
You know, it's kind of funny, the older I get, the more the old homilies make sense, and one of the ones that finally makes sense to me after my term in politics here is you want to keep the enemies that you have closer to you than your friends, and I never quite understood that, and then I got into politics and now I know what they're talking about. And I think to some extent to give up the Security Council veto at this point would be a mistake. I think we should exercise it regularly instead of rarely, and I do think ultimately we need to leave. When that is remains to be seen. It could be next year, it could be 10 years, but to leave just precipitously without considering the real value of a Security Council veto, we can veto everything they do. And I think that might be a little more powerful weapon than you realize if properly used. But ultimately, yeah, we need to get out of the United Nations and the treaties that are binding us up.